So I think we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. I'm Ann Feeney. I'm the Executive Assistant for AESA, and I'm excited to have Dr. Jerry Gillespie back with us this afternoon to share some back-to-school resources with us. We're very fortunate to have Microsoft as a business partner, and they've been very helpful with sharing the resources and tools that they have. So, Dr. Gillespie, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Yes, it's so glad to be back. I'm hoping you can all hear me well. Sound check on here.
I can hear you.
Awesome. So I am going to have, I'm going to stop briefly. Of course, my name is Dr. Jerry Gillespie. I am an educator. That is my true passion and what I will always forever be. I am right now currently with Microsoft as a program manager in our EDU engagement team. And we sit actually on the engineering side and are here as a commitment to our EDU customers in providing any support and all support we can in using our products to support teaching and learning. So today, yes, I'm going to dive into some of those resources that we have, talk about setting up systems, answer some questions, and I'm going to go ahead right now. I am here. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video so that I can share my screen for you, save some bandwidth. I have young adults, children that have moved back, and it seems like it's a constant battle for Wi-Fi in my house. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off, and then we'll get started here today. Renan is going to be here and help me monitor the chat, and I will stop briefly for some questions to go through and answer some questions. So please use the chat window to ask some questions. If you're not seeing the chat window because of the way the meeting was set up for that too, we can also have some time as we go through the presentation, or you can answer, raise some hands and answer some questions. So. All right, I'm waiting for this to come up here. Let's try this again. Let's see here. All right. So, Renan, does our screen look good? So I can get started?
You're good.
All righty. So, yes, today what I'm going to talk about is really diving into our Microsoft tools and resources that we have to support blended and remote learning. I'm going to talk a little bit about team structures. I'm going to talk about this from our back to school actual kit that we had out. You might have seen on our different social platforms in our Enable Remote Learning community. We've shared these resources, and it really looks at a level from building systems from a leadership level, if you're a support, as far as maybe even a training support, then also even looking as an educator and some tips in that we can use as we go through getting things set up using Microsoft tools in the classroom for back to school. Again, always start with those norms and expectation. I know your time is valuable. It is most valuable resource, especially for educators. When I talk to educators globally, if I ask them the one resource I could give back to them, they always tell me time. So please make this session that we have as relevant for you. You can ask questions, use that Q&A panel that we have on the side there. And then when I stop, if you have questions, please feel free to dive in. And if I don't have an answer for you here, trust me, I will follow up and make sure that you get the answers that you need. I always keep this in even when I was a principal. Like I said, I came from education as a teacher, an instructional coach, and I was an elementary principal. I'm working with, of course, my staff. I always talked about keeping an open mind and heart, and that just keeps us open just for new possibilities in that. I know how difficult right now is coming back to school. I've been helping my sister, who is a special education teacher for over 20 years, get her system set up. So I know how crazy this time of year is. And then the third thing is enjoy the journey. have fun, use these resources. Don't be afraid to try new things. Find support. I've put a link in here, and of course, we're going to send this deck out, this whole presentation, make it available for all of AESA members so that they can see this resource. And there are valuable links throughout this entire presentation that you can have, and please feel free to explore. You can find me there on my Twitter accounts, LinkedIn, or even on Facebook. There's a Facebook group too that you can reach out and find me there too. That Enable Remote Learning community, of course, is our community that supports educators, IT admin all over the world globally. There's about, I think, 8,000 educators in there now. It is supported by our EDU engagement team. There are product managers and that in there, plus just wealth of information from other Microsoft users globally that can help answer questions. And we're going to talk about all the way that we go through here. I'm going to talk about using what we know as educators and really talking about how I know, for one, that we embrace change. In education, the one thing that we do is we embrace change. However, with that, we are so inundated with change every day because we get new students, we have new curriculum, content, that our profession, throughout that profession, is changed. So sometimes I get a little kind of upset when I hear others outside of education think that we don't embrace change, and we do. Because of what we have to and what's at stake, we sometimes are selective with our change. So we have to ask questions, we have to take a little deeper dive and look at those resources. So as I'm going through these things, I know that that's there. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask and feel comfortable to step up so that we can help support you in that. Also, we are all here to support students. That is why we are in this profession. That is what all of us want here at Microsoft too. That is part of our mission. It's empowering everyone to achieve all that they can, to achieve the best that they can. So this is where we are here to support students. And so, in fact, when I was an administrator, I know when teachers came to school in our building, no one came into that building and said, how can I mess up my job as much as I can today? That is just not how we operate. We are all here to support students. And then lastly, I know this is the art of reflection. And so what I mean by that is that this is definitely where we're going to sit back and have that time of looking at practice. I know one of my favorite educational researchers, Dr. Robert Marzano, has, the art and science of teaching, which is true. But however, I really think it's the art of reflection. It's that continuous improvement. It's always looking at our practice, what we need next, what tools are out there. And it's just that constant state of reflection, that how we can find the impact. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to be able to dive deeper in these tools and what's available at Microsoft, and which is our focus for today. We're going to look at these Microsoft tools and resources to support blended learning and remote learning for back to school. You should, by the end of this presentation, if I've done my job and actually giving you what I promised, is you should have enough resources to be able to follow through, know about the different tools that we have that can support that instruction, and feel confident that you have at least some resources to help support with back to school. And I have to throw this in because I hear a lot of times about, about how much it costs and free, about other programs and resources being free. If you are a student educator from an eligible institution, meaning a school institution, of course, you can get started with Office 365 for free. And so there is a link to that of being able to dive in. If you are new to Office 365 for EDU, there's a link here for you to be able to dive in and to even just try these resources and to see what the tools are there that are available, right? So I'm going to actually follow this agenda for today as we go through here. I'm going to talk about getting your system ready, getting organized, some training and support resources, how to maybe communicate and share, and then next steps and support for your system as you go through. We're going to look at it as far as from educators as well as from leaders, and talk about how those resources and some really tips and tasks that you can do to help you as you go through this transition. So looking at this side for getting your system ready. Now I'm going to start with leadership and talking about if you're in that support system and maybe you are overseeing a system, especially at a service center, and you offer this type of support, if you're a training resource there, you want to remind all schools, remind all participants, everyone to make sure that they're using all of the up-to-date Office 365 programs, that all of those updates are created. Just like when we use our cell phone, if we do not update our cell phone and they're not working correctly, I know that in fact, this week I had a new update for my Apple phone that had to do with patches and that. We have made so many changes over the last few months, especially to applications like Microsoft Teams to help with that end user experiences. So we want to make sure all of our products in that Office 365 structure are up to date. If you are a leader, you may want to identify any of your team structures and make sure that you've shared that with any of your schools. Or if you're in a place where you want to give that guidance, there are resources available. Maybe you have schools that you're supporting from your service agency that would like to know more about team structures, and there's the information that you can actually share with them and have those deeper kind of conversations to support that. Looking at those system critical commitments, this is something that we had as far as coming through in this program that I'm going to talk about in this presentation today, is really being on that consistent message that everyone is feeling prepared, has the resources that are available, and that there is also a place that you can see your efforts. If we're going to look at education and really look at how we can get better, how we can have that continuous improvement strand, we want to have systems in place to be able to evaluate where people are in that process. So that might be something that you might even be helping some of your districts or schools that you support within your system. Now, as an educator, I'm going to say that same message is you're going to want to make sure that you're jumping in and making sure that your programs are up to date, and that you have really reviewed those team structures if they're not created for you. A lot of times schools will have a set structure that they want, but if not, you're going to want to check those structures. I'm going to dive in deeper with some examples in this presentation in just a little bit and give some examples of what that would look like. And this is a time also, if you use OneNote or a class notebook, making sure that you're following those best practices to make as far as putting your resources together, you have those materials together. I also have some links within this presentation about how to use your OneNote and those best practices to really be ready for back to school and getting your environment ready as you get your classroom ready and as students are coming back to school. And looking at teams right here, for example, just a little reminder what we're talking about in our teams. Reminding that this area over to the side, this is actually the Teams EDU tenant interface. This is what it looks like when you're in Teams. You may not have as many Teams as this, depending on your organization or with your classes. However, as you can see over on this box that we have over that I've highlighted in red, which is the menu bar over to the left-hand side, this is what we refer to as the Me space. That is where you're going to find all of your activity and your files and any information that pertains to yourself and your account. One thing that you're wanting to do when you're getting your team set is to make sure that you have all of your icons there. You know where they are in your calendar, and all of those, your chat messages, all of those are set, and you understand those functionalities. In the middle here, we call where you can see these this grid view blocks of the class teams, or maybe you have a staff team, depending on the kind of team and what your function and how you're using it. We call this the We space in the middle. And the reason why it's the We space is because this is where all of that collaboration, all of that sharing files, everything, that's where all of this and really power comes from using Teams. It brings all of our applications together, our learning materials, and creates a hub for setting up your classroom instructional environment. As we make this shift right now, as we move more into this hybrid, more blended learning, remote learning type of scenarios and situations, we are really looking at how to add to that digital instructional toolbox. And Teams has the autonomy and the flexibility to be able to add in third-party applications that we're using, outside website URLs to one place, plus all of the applications that are right in Microsoft that make it a powerful instructional wheelhouse to be able to use those strategies that we know work as educators. And then just a review too about making sure that when you're setting up those teams, that you're using the right kind of team. If you are setting up your own teams for use and you're not having them set up by your school district, or if you're a service center trying to explain or support some of your schools or different districts setting up their own team structures, just remembering that in the EDU Microsoft for Teams version, we have the option of these 4 different types of teams just to support the complexity and the work that we do in education. That first team is going to be your class team. That is the team that's going to represent the relationship between a teacher and a student. That is the team that comes with the idea that the team owners are going to be those teachers and the team members are going to be the students. And there are built-in permissions that help the teacher moderate and control those students, or actually help manage, just like classroom management, managing the team structure with the students in there for instruction. The features that include are, of course, that class notebook, which is the OneNote notebook that has the class notebook that's designed for students. OneNote is that digital notebook that's like a digital binder. A class notebook enables teachers to have each student's digital notebook right inside that team. So for example, I used to teach 5th grade. In the beginning of the year when I started out, one of the first days back to school, we would get our binders out. I would hand out those little section holders and be able to pass those out. And they would have their section dividers. And then of course we would fill those pages of information as we gone through. This is that same concept. It's going to be a digital binder concept where students are going to have their own sections, be able to store their work. They will only be able to see their own digital notebook. However, teachers will have access to all students' notebooks so that they can go in and out and be able to add in feedback, see work, have students be able to collaborate in different sections. It really is a way for teachers to be able to access and have that give and take feedback, formative assessment in that with students. It's not like the days when I used to have to try and carry 5 or 10 notebook binders home a day or do binder checks. So it's definitely something that can be part of the team that is just very empowering for that. You have your professional learning community teams. These are those teams that are set up for maybe departments, grade levels. This is the type of team that has in mind that that's that collaborative work that's going to be done. Team owners and team members are going to be taken as all educators on the same equal as a peer relationship and a colleague relationship, being able to equally share, read and write permissions, be able to have that work here. The OneNote that is included in this team really has a wealth of information on professional learning communities. And in that notebook that is there is research that is based on the professional learning communities work that's been done by some of the leading research that's in the field. The information there is on things like establishing SMART goals, establishing roles in meetings, just explaining the foundation for PLCs. This is a great resource if you're going to take this information, great resource for brand new teachers. I know as we are transitioning into these new I've heard a lot lately about this new type of normal, or as we're moving forward and trying to build these systems for blended learning and remote learning and bringing in more of these digital tools. We have those new teachers out there that need some extra support and mentoring. Great information in these PLC notebooks if you're going to want to establish and have some support for some new teachers out there, or even for training needs in that. That third type of team is a staff team. Staff leaders and staff member team, it's similar to a class team. However, it's designed for that administrator, manager, supervisor. There's even if you're an instructional coach, a lot of times I've seen them also use this type of team because it has that same concept of the class notebook, but it's a staff notebook, but the same kind of concept where everyone has their own type of digital notebook inside one notebook that a manager or an administrator or an instructional coach can see and be able to have that feedback in there. A lot of times people get confused because they see staff in the title, and if they do work on a staff, they think this is the type of team we need. We're going to work together, and really it's not that type of team as far as the membership, because this is going to be a team that's going to require a definite owner and a definite members as far as that give and take. And then there is the Any team, which is great for committees, work groups, departments, any kind of support teams that you have. A lot of the teams that I used at the administrative level when I was as a district administrator, I supported all of our K-12 instructional technology. So I had a lot of different various professional development teams, support teams, administrative teams. A lot of the teams that we had up were just in this other team that is here that allows you still all the autonomy and flexibility of using these Microsoft Teams. And then, of course, when we talk about team structure, primary, I get asked this question quite frequently. I have littles, I have primary students. Here's an idea I want to make sure that everybody's aware of. I'm trying to think about if you're setting up your team, think about how you would set up the environment of your classroom. When you're setting up any of your channels, now the channels in a team are going to be, so you can see here, they're all numbered. These are these different areas of a team, and it's really about the file structure. So when I'm explaining teams to educators, or in fact anyone when I'm in a training session, I talk about a team as a file cabinet. Think of that metal file cabinet that you have in your classroom or in your office, and how all that information is stored. I know when I went from any role, from teacher to principal to even to district office, the first thing I thought about was how I was going to, of course, take my files and my information, and that's definitely a place of where I kept a lot of my resources. So when you have this team, each one of these channels acts as a drawer in that file cabinet. So for example, if I look at the structure of this team, number one is reading fun. Inside that channel, I'm going to have all of my files, my tabs across the top in the team, any of my information, all of my resources, everything is going to be about that reading fun, that content area. For example, in this kindergarten class. So the same with the math around us and the science and so forth. As we are setting up our teams, don't forget to add in, especially for the more primary and in elementary and even higher. I have a high schooler too. Adding in the structure where you're really having those highlights and celebrations. You're putting in areas maybe for some character education, some social emotional support. I've even seen some teams working with some schools across the country that have actually added in a recess learning break channel where students can just get in and be able to talk and be social, and the teachers there just giving them some breaks once a week and having them have that social time. And then, like, for example, in this example that we have here, using any kind of visual cues that you can with especially those primary students that aren't reading yet, that need that support. This right here, you can get to these emojis if you are on a Windows keyboard. You can hit that Windows key plus the period key. So you're going to hit Windows and period key, and you'll get an emoji box. That emoji box comes up, and then you can actually add icons into your channels. You can add them into your messages, your daily messages. And you can see here where we used a moon, a tree, a star. You can even have where you can help those littles be able to find they're in the moon group or the tree group or that, so that they're able to find maybe where they're meeting a lot easier. So just wanted to make sure that we're looking at those structures, especially for primer, and how we can add those visual cues in there. Leadership. If you are at a point where you are at the service center and you have more of the business side or support services side, think about how you could even add structures for leadership that will create that system of collaboration and communication that might be hierarchical. You can see where there are ways to have academic departments where you're able to store this information because of that concept I was talking about, where a channel is like that file drawer. It's a place where the team can come in and see those resources, but see how they're separated and have that organizational piece there. Again, why this is so invaluable to systems and educational systems is that you now have the file structure and the security of Microsoft behind as far as that organizational piece that's going to preserve all the work that's done. So if you are a pack rat like I am and you keep everything, in fact, I went through my files when I recently left. I think I had lessons from 1997 just because I like to keep everything. I'm not encouraging you to do that at all. But my just pointing out that is when you're setting up these team structures, and I'm working with a lot of service agencies or administrative offices or support services. They appreciate the history of the chat messages, the meetings that are there, the information in the file storage that they're able to keep in an organized fashion, so that if somebody does come into their new organization or if a role changes, they still have the historical picture of what happened there in their learning org. Here's another example of some different types of structures for leadership. I really want to point out that middle team, which is called here in this example, the Pine Valley District Mentor Team. Setting up internal structural teams, for example, a mentor team, a champion team, somewhere where you can have a point of need or just-in-time system for educators that might need that type of support to come in, find answers. This was an example of a team that we used between our mentors and our first year and second year teachers, where they could find information, they could ask questions. It was available to them 24/7 because of course they could ask a question at any time. It wasn't monitored 24/7, but of course the next morning, depending on when that question was there, they could see and be able to answer that question and follow up. But being able to use these team structures to be able to create support is definitely something that you can definitely provide from a service agency, and then share that information on with your districts or your schools that are involved there. And then class structures. We talked a lot about that primary class and that kindergarten class. Same thing, you can still use those emojis even in your more of your elementary or even secondary classes. Some you might want to have a channel or a class to make it easy for your students and more consistent for families that are home that are also trying to transition into this space. I'm a working mom. I was on just yesterday with my high schooler trying to get her set up and going. So I understand as much as we can help families make and carry this bridge across. You might have just a channel for homework support. It really depends on your class meetings if you want to have them in a certain space, if you're in by class or by order, but just having these consistent places across to set up those class structures makes it easier for people to follow at home and people to understand. I get questions asked about this a lot, those specialist groups. So if you have those support services, or if you have specialists that have a large number of students that they support. So for example, maybe your PE, your music, your art teachers, and your language teachers, any kind of support service where they are supporting an entire student body or a very large number of students. There's different ways to set up that team. I've given a couple of examples here. Things that you're going to want to remember about this is that when you, for example, set up a class meeting, so I'm going to use Miss Kara's elementary school music. This is an example of a third grade music team, and you can see there's a channel for each of the different teachers. Classes in there, and this little lock that's on there, the little lock next to it, represents a private channel. When you set up those classes, you can of course control who can attend those who can attend the channels by selecting the student in each one of those. However, you cannot schedule at this time a meeting in those private channels. So if you want to have a time for class meetings, so for another channel to store all those class meetings, if you're going to have all your class meetings in the general channel, or if you create a class meeting channel, you just have to remember that all those students will be able to see that meeting that's taking place. So, and I've talked to some schools and districts, and they've said that's no problem. We really got a schedule that we've let parents know we're comfortable with that, and we're okay if students find the wrong meeting. We'll just teach them and give them some adjustments so that they get on schedule. And then there are other places that do not want to have that breakdown. So it really goes into setting up those teams and how you want to have that structure and how you want to have those class meetings. But I did want to bring that up because these are the kinds of conversations you're going to want to have with your department, with your administrators. If you're a service agency, when you're trying to help with this, maybe team structures, or maybe you'll get questions about this from your members, just being aware of these are some questions and conversations to have. Here are an example of some advanced music or fitness, just having it broken down by units in those different channels. You can also see where there's an example of the class meetings and the shout outs and celebrations in the same fashion. And then in here, as far as resources and best practices, remember, I'm going to send this whole PowerPoint out. It's going to go out to the AESA members, and you're going to have access to all of these links and resources that are in here. What you're going to find here are some best practice guide about using your OneNote. OneNote is a phenomenal tool, but it is a file. So a lot of times we get so caught up in what it can do that we want to put everything in there, and every video and every kind of large resource that we have, and remembering that we're just making a really large file. So this talks about best practice guides of using links and how to link that information, and using videos that are fluid, meaning put that video in there, have it used, and then take it out after it's done. You know, just some of those kinds of best practice tips of being able to use your OneNote. I believe that there's even some time where Mike Folfson is our OneNote genius. I like to call him Mike T. He has some phenomenal videos. I put his YouTube channel on there for quick tip videos. But he referred to, at one time I've heard someone refer to as like putting your OneNote on a diet, to make sure that you have that file accessible and it's user friendly and it's efficient. It's efficient for all of your users as they're going through it. I'm going to pause there before we get into our next section, see if we have any questions or not.
I haven't seen any questions yet.
All right, so if anybody has any questions, like to raise a hand or come in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move right on. So next thing talking about is we've checked our systems, we've talked about our team structures. Now we're going to talk about getting organized and looking at the programs and what we want to actually use. From that leadership perspective, we're also going to maybe look at and get some gather information. And as a service center, and I've helped different service agencies across actually use these types of forms that I'm going to talk about using Microsoft Forms to develop surveys and get information. Now, this might be something that even if your schools have started back to school and they're in session, these kinds of continuing these surveys out and gathering information process can continue on throughout the year. It's just going to help you gather more knowledge and then find resources, in fact, like we have, to maybe provide more training sessions, or seeing there might be some kind of holes in your systems that might not even be recognized as far as understanding what is going on in there. And so that's what we're talking about as far as assessing your system. That was something that we started doing as a practice that with myself and my team is we had developed on Microsoft Forms this example survey. Now you're going to have a link to the survey, and it's going to make a duplicate survey for you, so it's yours. You can feel free to edit. Remember, this is just an example of something I created in my practice. So feel free to change and go through and edit as you need. The survey that's here in this link is really long. And so I understand that and I know that. So feel free to shorten it down. But it just has questions in there about beliefs of the role of technology in education, a self-perception of skills using different products like Teams or using cloud services. And then really having those questions about also how well they're using in their practice. The reason why that information is so valuable is because there's different types of support that people may need depending on how it is that they're responding. Like if they're having trouble even understanding how technology fits and instruction in their practice, that's a different type of training and support than just what the tool is and their self-perception of their skills. So this is just an example of a survey that can gather that type of information to get from your members, to get from the people that you support, and maybe even a tool for administrators out in their schools. We had this tool available to a lot of the administrators that we served, and they would use this with their staff quarterly through just to watch and see and help with their training support within their own system of their school and identifying those needs of their staff. So knowing what this is, you can have here, this is an example of developing and looking at those self-assessment checklists. So looking at, can I locate my teams? Can I identify the difference between the desktop? This is just set those I can statements that helps members, teachers, people that we're supporting and training, look at those examples of skills, and then it's almost I always thought this was a confidence builder, because once we went through trainings and sessions, a lot of educators felt pretty confident where they were and didn't realize they knew as much as they did, especially those that felt overwhelmed, and let them take things at least in bite-sized chunks so that they can have that learning progression to make the tool themselves, because it really is at the end of the day, it is about the why, it is about how it supports instruction, and it should, any tool that we have should help teachers do the best that they can. It should not do their job for them, but it should help them be a master educator at using the skills that they know. So if we can have them have some confidence here, then they can start thinking as they make these tools their own, how it fits in that instructional cycle. And that's what I'm talking about as far as making that instructional toolbox, that instructional digital toolbox. And so that's leading into this slide about with that educator identifying, those essential tools that you want to help support your instruction when you start. My recommendations and what I've always told people is, of course, Microsoft Teams, because that's going to be your hub. It can be your hub for communication, collaboration, instruction. Even if you're using other, we have some services that are using different other learning management systems. They all connect into Teams. Teams becomes that hub for that storage information, all of that structure of what's happened in the classroom. The next one is Flipgrid. Flipgrid is an amazing tool. It is a digital communication recording conversation platform. A lot of times people do not realize that Flipgrid is in the Microsoft family of tools. It's actually owned by Microsoft, and it comes with it comes with, of course, all of our Microsoft, even with we've talked already about how Microsoft resources are free to educators. Flipgrid is free to all educators. So there are people that have been using Flipgrid for years, and that is definitely a piece, especially with the ability to use those conversational videos that integrate so well into Teams to be able to support that organization or even that community feel in your classroom. And then the next one I always say is really diving into setting up those class notebooks and learning about OneNote. If you are at a point where Teams is new to you and Flipgrid's new to you, hey, take these in at a time, one at a time. Remember what I said in that very beginning, enjoy the journey, and know that you have help. There's resources we can help you with, but being able to just identify first those top 3 that you want to get to and learn more about. As you move through, these are some other tools that can support instruction and learning for the year, and then choosing what it is that you want to be able to do. So for example, at the bottom here we have Stream. These are not in any particular order, but I just wanted to list these other tools that we have here. Stream is where we house, that's the video platform that houses all those class meetings. So if you are storing your class meeting, if you're recording a class meeting so that students can follow up later and be able to review that class meeting, you're going to want to dive more into Stream and be able to follow up and understand and learn how those videos are stored in that too. So these are some of the tools that are available here, and I've got resources here. It talks about each tool that we have for EDU, what it's used for and why it might matter. And again, I'm going to be sending this presentation out so you will have access to this information and be able to utilize these resources. I'm going to dive a little bit into Flipgrid right here. So from
Hey, Jerry, real quick,
yes.
we just had somebody ask if you could share that link to the survey in the chat box.
In the chat box to the survey,
Or in the chat.
the first one, the back one.
Yeah, one more. Or
Yes,
two more slides back.
Is it okay if I do it after I go through this and I'll put it in before this is over? Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, awesome. So as we go through here, again, I'm going to talk about Flipgrid because I use this program as an administrative leader and even in my PD, and teachers use it all the time. I'm just going to talk a little bit about Flipgrid. And of course, when you come into Flipgrid, you go to flipgrid.com and you can use your Microsoft login to be able to get in to access this tool. Once you get into Flipgrid, it's easy to collaborate, find other people across the country that are using Flipgrid. They have a ton of ideas and resources there for people to be able to get to access and create their own. You can create resources. So for example, what I'm showing here in the middle, these are called video shorts, and they really are online video clips where you can add in information and then share a link, and you can add these into different programs. Like I have teachers I know that add them into Minecraft. They add them, of course, into their team channels. They add them into as a PD resource. It's a link that you can share anywhere. And then they have this place in here called Discovery also that actually gives you access to all kinds of topics and different kinds of panels and that are already here from Flipgrid that you can actually take as your own and start using in your own practice. Flipgrid integrates so well into Teams. When you create a Flipgrid, you can see here and you want to share it, there is a Teams icon. You can actually send it to a person, a particular group, or you can put it right into a channel of a classroom so that you can share that information. This is the new feel of Flipgrid. If you are brand new to Flipgrid, I'm going to talk about later about the help resources and where to get training on Flipgrid. If you have been using Flipgrid for years and think it's awesome, of course, you're probably aware these are the new features that have been changed with Flipgrid. There used to be something here where you had these grids of different topics that you discussed that fit inside of each other. It was kind of the idea if you had a unit of instruction and you would have different topics in your unit of instruction. They now have changed here to where you have these groups, which are still can put topics inside and have those topics assigned in those different kinds of group conversations. But you now can create topics right by themselves individually. So, which is awesome because sometimes you just have some off topics that you want to start, you want to share. For example, I have seen people create topics for welcome back. You can create a Flipgrid board, which is a video, welcoming back your families, letting introductions of your teachers. I've been working with administrators and school districts creating different Flipgrid topics where they take short video clips introducing staff members, especially those staff members like counselors, librarians, maybe even instructional support that not all students or parents get to see right away. But it's a way to bring the community together and have that visual representation of someone sharing information about themselves. The new features that are available here, you can see if you've never been to Flipgrid, this is what it looks like. It's very user-friendly. When you go to record a video, a box will pop up that looks like this. You can see very simple right inside. There is a large record button that's here. You have options where you can actually upload your own clip. You can do a mirror video where you can actually see the boxes and show information, point to information, and you can even record screen, which is amazing on here. So it can be a quick way to add in some video resources. I do quick PD, short PD videos a lot using Flipgrid. I can hit the record button, which is this big red button here. I can give the pre-explanation of what I'm going to be demonstrating. I stop my video, I pull up the record screen. I can record my screen demonstrating something, like if, for example, if I'm going to demonstrate like what we just used, the emojis with that Windows and the period key, I could show what that looks like. Then I could, again, pause my video and then come back and hit the record button again and have a conclusion, just explaining more about what it is I just presented. I then can share that video out online. I can add it to a team. It's easy to share. I can add in different effects with different filters, frames. I can add more text on top. So a lot of times in the videos, I'll share how to get a hold of me. I can write right on top. There's even a whiteboard that you can actually demonstrate math problems. I've seen math teachers use this as far as being able to write on the board and be able to give quick, maybe instructional and math pieces. And then, like I said, this is back to that kindergarten class and those daily messages. I know as a teacher and as a principal, I sat out every day in the morning and welcomed my students either into my classroom or into the school. You can actually use Flipgrid to send out those daily messages and be able to have that connection with your class. If you're at a service agency, sending out memos weekly, I use it quite often now as far as sharing information and reaching out to the customers that I have and just checking in with them and sharing them a weekly message and letting them know I'm here. And it's just a way for me to build community and relationship and so that they feel supported. Of course, there's more information here on these other EDU tools. These are all links to the resources and information. This is, of course, on staff notebooks, what it's used for, forms and PowerPoint. Minecraft and Microsoft Whiteboard, I'm going to take a closer look into. These are really great universal tools for engagement, collaboration, problem solving, understanding computational thinking. Just had a session with some customers yesterday that we reviewed Minecraft for education, and they did not realize all of the potential that Minecraft has, and of course is available to those with Microsoft licensing, and they have can have those Minecraft licenses across the country and be able to support students with those engaging environments. And then, of course, Microsoft Whiteboard, which is an instructional support piece that it offers a canvas to be able to set up collaboration space. I'm going to talk about in a little bit about some changes and features and how Whiteboard can actually be used to support even professional development. I use Whiteboard a lot, even in when I'm doing training sessions and want to interact with people in my training sessions. And then, of course, Sway, which is that digital newsletter resource that we have. For those of you who did not know, we do have Stephen Reed, who is also a colleague on my team. He's going to be talking about Minecraft and diving in about the use of Minecraft. So I wanted to put this in here. We'll be back next Thursday on September 3rd here for another opportunity to talk about how Minecraft supports education. In fact, those tools of being able to use it for digital storytelling, again, problem solving. And a lot of times when I look at it, assessment really comes to mind because it's a way for students to engage. I've seen math teachers use it, science teachers use it, all the way using it for community and social studies and those community sports, ELA pieces where you can add links in to read. It's just a great tool to be able to bring in all those parts and pieces in education so that students become owners of their learning, and they're able to use these skills that they're using, digital literacy skills, math skills, computational skills in application. And then it gives a way for teachers to even pool those practices across into other disciplines and be able to use those same kinds of concepts. I've seen teachers use this where students have created and designed their own learning space, or bedrooms or that too, so that then they do their online or remote learning. They've created their own learning space in Minecraft and are able to access their links and their resources and that for learning. And of course integrates into Teams and be able to use it with the other Microsoft products. Whiteboard. Whiteboard is that other phenomenal tool there that when we're talking about a digital instructional toolbox. Whiteboard is actually built into when you have a Teams meeting. You can share from your Teams meeting the Whiteboard app, and it's a collaborative space for all people in that meeting. Now, as an educator or even from a service site or PD, I've used this in PD. One thing to note, there's some great changes coming to Whiteboard as they, of course, enhance the features depending on the feedback that they're hearing from educators. There's a difference between the actual whiteboard that's integrated into a Teams meeting and then the whiteboard application. So the whiteboard application or the whiteboard app is actually where you can receive and download and be able to use that as a resource where you have more features that of course are available that then you can use as a screen share in instruction. But what they've added to that whiteboard app is just phenomenal for educators. I've got an example here of a KWL chart, which is those charts about what do I know, what do I wonder, what have I learned. You can actually use these sticky notes to review, move around, and have students take ownership about where they're starting their learning. It's a way for connecting those and pre-setting those learning goals and what it is that they should be learning. It adds clarity where students can be able to then discover content. You can add links right into a whiteboard. You can add pictures. You can add in PowerPoints. You can add all kinds of things to set up your learning environment using Whiteboard, and I call it setting the stage. So just like when I used to start sessions for my own professional development, and when I was a trainer and doing having adult learners, and I had different various tools, I would set them up, of course, there in my right before a class. I'd make sure I had all my materials ready. You can still use Whiteboard that same way and be able to access those different tools. Just as a teacher in the classroom, I would do the same thing for a lesson. It helps keep that fluid motion of your lesson, especially if you're working with more younger primary students, or if you have time constraints with secondary students and you need to get that information out. So it's a great tool to be able to set up your workspace and then collaborate. You can actually share that board with your students to collaborate, have them work in groups. You can add a Flipgrid link in there so that they can have some assessment, ask a question, and then you can get feedback. There's just a multitude of ways to be able to use this. On this slide right here, you can see there's a link to the community blog. Ian Mikatel is the PM, this is a program manager. He's the manager that oversees Whiteboard. And that is a link to find him on Twitter to ask questions. He's very available. And then there's that bottom one is a live demo discussion that Stephen Reed and myself had with Ian, reviewing all of these new Whiteboard features and talking about different ways to use it instructionally. So again, you'll have all of these links in that because we're going to send this presentation out to all of AESA members. And then, of course, Stream, like I said, is, of course, another tool that's going to have that video platform that's going to hold those class meetings if they're recorded, be able to share that information. Stream is an internal video source, so it keeps all of those student videos and, of course, class meetings safe in your organization so they cannot get out, and which it really helps with student privacy and compliance areas. Translator and for education that's available along with our immersive reader tools and our accessibility tools throughout our platforms. In fact, we just had a release of 14 updates coming to Immersive Reader where you're going to find these learning tools that allow for our accessibility functionality of text-to-speech, translation, even breaking down syllables, all of those supports that every student needs. A lot of times when we think accessibility or for thinking these kind of tools, we are just thinking maybe about students that are in special programs. But being in education for over 23 years, every student can really benefit from these different tools that are available across our products by being able to find this immersive reader symbol and being able to get translation. There's been 4 new languages added to Translator. Immersive Reader is now available in different partners across their tools. It is also available across all Microsoft applications and now even more Microsoft products in applications that they've added to. So these are just tools here that this is a tool that has just been supporting students in learning. And again, when we come back to that instructional toolbox, digital toolbox is a piece that we should be sharing with our families, with our students, because this is really a tool that's going to make that difference of making them independent learners. Power Automate, Bookings, and Power BI are here if you want to learn more about, but I'm going to be honest, these are just here to help with the functionality and our higher tools. They're not the basic tools that we have in here, but I wanted to make sure that everyone had a full understanding of the entire suite that we had in ED's suite. I'm going to stop right there. Besides the link, Renan, because we will, make sure that we get that link out there too, but is there any questions right now about where we're at?
There's nothing in the chat currently unless anybody has any pressing things they would like to talk about
I'm
or
sorry
ask.
to interrupt. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Can you just go back one slide? I know we're gonna get
Sure.
a recording of it and everything, but I didn't catch I'm a visual writing down everything type of learner.
No
So
worries.
just wanted to.
This one right here, these are Power Automate, Bookies, and Power BI. Let me explain. These are more of our productivity tools that a lot of on the back end, more people, or even as you learn these tools and progress and use them. I know of teachers, educators, even in service agency as an administrator, I use these three tools a lot. But I don't want people to be overwhelmed because of if they're just going through and really learning more about the products, you're going to want to stick with the more EDU tools that I had in the beginning and then work your way to these. I will be honest, all of these tools that I've outlined and put here together, you can create an entire learning system. What Power Automate does is it makes any of those automated, like those tasks automated in the back. So if you want a notification about an email that came in, if you want an automated message that somebody has made a change to a document that you might have put in, somebody added something to a team. There's all different types of automations and alerts that you can put in different tasks and even create new files and do all these automated processes on the back with various Microsoft tools. The links in blue that you're seeing here, so for example, this Power Automate, that's a link here, that is going to take you to all of our training and help centers in each one of these. So when you get this, you'll be able to click on these. Bookings is also a resource that now that if you have a license with Microsoft, these are these tools that come in and it really depends on the licenses that are available. But these are the only three that are in that bucket that are there. And Bookings is that where you have that productivity kind of scheduling calendar. So if you have any of your service centers or your schools that are using or have an A3 license or that too, they will have Bookings. What Bookings does is it helps them set up meetings or schedules. So for example, if you're trying to set up office hours for your teachers, if you're trying to set up office hours in your own service center for people to check in, Bookings can help you do that, where they will actually come through and people can find a time on your calendar that's open. You set the calendar times that you want to have open for people to find and schedule, and it makes it easier and more efficient for you to be able to schedule those meetings. And then Power BI is really a dashboard where you can take your data analytics and make dashboards out of it and add in information to create more of a data system. But as you get more familiar with these Microsoft EDU tools, it really is as you add more and more knowledge and information and putting these tools together and working together, that's when you create that whole system. All right, and then training and support. So I'm going to dive into training, different kinds of training and support, and really from a leadership. So if you're at a service center leadership place and you want to support support your schools, your services, or if you're at a school and you're looking at that, just really trying to make and setting the system where you have resources available in a balanced way for your staff and your teachers to feel like they have that support to make that shift in practice. The links that are available here is I'm gonna actually go into the new virtual training sessions site from our Microsoft stores, and we've got some new, in fact, some new positions that are across the country of education that are education customer service. People that have come from education, they were teachers, they have an educational background, that are here to also help and support these training efforts. So just the big message here is that there are resources out there available for you. And then also we have our Microsoft Education Center, which is, of course, I'm going to dive in a little deeper in that and talk about the different courses you can take, videos that are there, and training that you have. We have a Microsoft Education channel on YouTube. Phenomenal resource there. There's minute videos, there's some of Mike videos, there's a lot of various different kind of training videos on there too, talking about how to use the different tools. And then I also have our Enable Remote Learning link where you can join that community. Anyone is welcome in that community that we have that I mentioned earlier in this presentation for follow-up support. And then Flipgrid resources, their help center and those kind of information. I'm going to dive a little deeper into that too. I've also got information here on Learning Pass, and and what that means in as far as in the Microsoft Education Center, and being able to actually follow a path of courses to learn about different tools and that in our Microsoft environment. And this is, again, just the same information for educators, how to find that information and that too. The one thing I'm going to put down here is trying to find these internal or external communities of support. If you can, of course, come and find, there's different there's a Twitter group out there if you're on social media. There is a Face group, Microsoft Teams group on Facebook. We have our Enable Remote Learning community. The Flipgrid, it has a community. They have a great community as far as support. But also, I have helped and worked with a lot of different, like I said before, service agencies, schools, even teachers themselves creating their own versions of internal communities where they've created a support system for themselves so that they're able to share resources, ask questions. That is really innately what we do as teachers and educators. We love to share. We love to share and learn from each other because we get ideas in application, in practice to be able to see how these tools will support what it is that we're doing. What I mean by balanced support, when I talked about that training and balanced support, really if you are either a leader from a service center, an educator, anything up here, this is what you want to keep in mind and make sure you're pulling yourself and building yourself a balanced support system. I use an analogy of a three-legged stool because no one likes to sit on a wobbly stool. You want to have those three legs of support. So what I talk about first is that direct instruction. Using those virtual events that you have the ability to connect with our different education customer service people that we have in these positions. You have different training sessions. There might be training sessions from your service centers if you want more train the trainers, where we can offer that too, be able to train their trainers in your service centers to be able to have those virtual events, to be able to have those kind of trainings. And then the next piece would be building yourself an online resource of those self-guided kind of on-demand videos, just follow-up resources, how to use that. That's where you can take in the information that we have from the online Microsoft Educator Center. You can take in the YouTube videos that you have. You can take in other webinars that you've had. I've done webinars for AESA. That's like links that you can pull in and have those available. I've been helping different regions and different centers across the country actually create videos and like creating their own portals of information so people have resources and these links to access. And that's something that you can go ahead and pull that content that's already there from Microsoft. And then that last piece is that just-in-time point of need. That's where you're going to find those community support, trying setting up office hours where people can jump in and ask questions. Those may be one-on-one follow-up sessions, being able to just really hit those questions that are at point of need and just in time, where you're trying to get something done. You've got enough knowledge where you're diving in, you're trying to play around, see how things work, and then you got to come across a question, or maybe you want to dive deeper in a subject. You need to have that time, that type of support and availability. And then our professional, these are just for examples of what that looks like and that three-balanced stool from Professional Learning Partnership with Microsoft. Again, these resources are free. They're available and out there. There are live learning events from our virtual schools, and I've got links to that. We have these on-demand learning materials in our center, and then joining our communities. In here, there's ways even from our virtual sessions, or if you reach out to some of our education partners, or even in our Enable Remote community, finding that just-in-time point of need support. So we have all of these different three balanced ways of support available, again, that are just free resources that are from Microsoft. This is a link to our new virtual training sessions from the Microsoft stores. They've just done a wonderful job with this team of pulling the resources that we have. These are previous educators coming together and creating virtual resources and workshops and training. What I want to point out, which is really key to this, and what I am just so proud and so when I looked at this site, I was so excited to see. As you can see up here, they have offerings even for students and teachers as well. So that is something you can also offer out to your families. I've had districts and people be able to offer some of these resources out just to make families feel a little bit more supported. Their students in different, I know they had some summer camp sessions diving into things like Minecraft. They've had just different sessions for students to even go in, but they are furthering to develop these resources. They're developing more of these workshops and trainings. There's going to be more to come. This is something that Microsoft has really pulled together based on the needs and listening to that feedback loop from educators. But this is a great resource also for service centers to be able to add into support for their members and be able to see these resources. This is just information. Again, this is what the Microsoft Education Center looks like. When you come in, you're going to see where there's training sessions, there's lesson plans, there's programs, resources. When you're signing in, you can see these courses and various different kinds of learning paths. This is example. Teachers have an opportunity when they come into the Education Center, they can actually earn these certificated badges. You can actually download transcripts. So when I was administrator and I was supported all of the PD and our staff, we had in the district that I supported, we had a little over 41,000 students. And then so our staff that I supported throughout that district, we use the Microsoft Educator Center to have them use more blended learning situations in themselves as teachers in professional development. They could then download transcripts, and then we would also offer offer as courses and credit and be able to use the information that they're using the transcripts, so that they were not only using the skills and learning more about using Microsoft products to support the pedagogy of using integrating digital tools, but also even more about Microsoft products. Because you can see in these learning paths, there's a link here that talks about these. There are different learning paths that are going to dive in deep into 21st century learning. There's going to be looking at different accessibility skills. There's Flipgrid in here. There's talking about digital citizenship. There are possibilities into looking at STEM. There's school leadership learning paths here. Minecraft, like what we talked about here. So it's not just learning just the tool and the functionality of a tool, but actually trying to talk about and have that conversation and looking how it might fit and support instruction. And so that's available there also. And again, that's where you can obtain those transcripts and be able to track that learning for yourself and your staff. Flipgrid. As I said, when you go to flipgrid.com and you log in with your Microsoft account, under your profile picture, you're going to see a help center available. They have guides for getting started. This is a phenomenal place. It's easy to follow. It's easy for end users to dive in. They explain how to just get started and walk you through the process. But that's where you're going to find all of that information here that, again, is just free resources of PD. They do live sessions monthly that are available with also with their training resources. I've added in a link here to the Flipgrid blog. This is where I go every other day to find out new information about Flipgrid and the resources they have. They talk about their latest changes, what's trending. They talk about the community. They have ideas about supporting instruction. This team is a phenomenal team. All have educator backgrounds, have done and used these products in instruction in the classroom with students. The stories that they share and they highlight about their community members are they're very approachable. I have even reached out to a few of the community members and educators that they've highlighted. I've reached out to them on Facebook or Twitter and got ideas from them and actually built a network of people that I could call on if I wanted to have more ideas on how to use these resources. So this even is a way to build that network of support and ask questions. But there's also a link here, of course, to that Flipgrid blog to be able to access that information. And then what I have here too is a tip. I call this my Dr. Jerry tip, and people don't realize that when you have your Office 365, whenever you log in or type into Office 365 and you go to your all apps, because you want to have that board all apps. Now, I have a lot of apps listed here just because this is my Microsoft page. You may not have all of these apps, but in the EDU, you do have those applications that come with Office 365. You're going to have on these different things like Teams and be able to Outlook and Stream and Whiteboard. Whenever you hover over an application and you see this little eye, I call it the magic eye. but it's like for information. If you go ahead and click on that, it's going to actually take you to the support and training center for that product. So you're going to be able to get right into the quick, easy guides, any videos, anything that's there on that help center for that product. Why this is important, I wanted to show out to you, is because this is a way to even help your family, your centers, people that you're supporting, anybody that's using Office, a way to find some instant information if they're looking for some resources there too. So it's just another way to get to maybe some more information if they're trying to look for some support of how to use a product. Okay. Communication and sharing, definitely a big thing. And this is kind of for both sides of leadership and educators, using things like Flipgrids, Teams meetings, if you have access to live events in your teams, Sway interactive newsletters. These are sources in being able to open up to your community, to share information, and to let your teaching community know what's going on. So, and I almost forgot, we got to a new section, Renan. Do we have any questions before I move on?
Yes, we had
Okay.
a question from an art teacher, and
Okay.
she asked, what area of Microsoft EDU tools should I focus on?
Oh, for on art tools. So I would definitely look at the Flipgrid because you can do those demonstrations of art, and I've seen people even use it. So for example, in our career technical program that we are here, where in our career technical program, we had, of course, our design, we had our the functionality of our sports and athletic training, our culinary arts, all of those fields, and welding, all of those places where you had to actually perform the function or have a demonstration of the skill and application. The same with different kind of art themes. And now, of course, you can go into mediums like whiteboard and be able to use those types of things, PowerPoint and design and that too. But if you're talking about, if you have art students that are actually creating an art, talking about their mediums and how they're doing, Flipgrid is a great tool because they're easy and able to record themselves, demonstrating or sharing the art that they've produced or how they're producing it. I've seen even in a ceramics class, I had a teacher who was talking about the different ceramics and how they used the different pieces. So Flipgrid is definitely that piece because it allows you to record that video and have that demonstration, and you almost have a way for students to share the work and to highlight what it is that they produce. If it's a way, especially in a remote learning where we can't be able to get into, you can of course take a picture of an art piece and then send it on. The reason why I say Flipgrid is because then you actually get to hear the voice of the student also to share maybe what their motivation behind their work is, share more about their work. It's a way for them to just put more of themselves into whatever it is that they produced. All right, any more questions? And then, of course, I'm going to add on to that is that, of course, you're going to want to use Teams because that is the hub that's going to pull those Flipgrids together because you can actually create an assignment from Teams for Flipgrid. So you can have a Flipgrid assignment that, and that will help you keep track. So if you're teaching something like art, like a demonstration. So I had an athletic trainer who was teaching and they had to practice different forms of taping ankles, taping hands. He actually created an assignment that was a Flipgrid assignment from Teams. Students were able to do their video and then they turned it in. And so that was part of their assignment, was their Flipgrid assignment, was to demonstrate that. So it's just amazing how these tools fit together. And then, of course, you could keep all of your portfolios of your art in OneNote. So those, again, I always go back to my top three because then you're going to have a full, of course, you're going to have that full experience, especially creating that portfolio in OneNote. If they've taken a picture of their art and then they can pull on a link to their Flipgrid, they now have a portfolio that's a digital portfolio of their artwork that they can pass on. Our high schoolers, a lot in our art schools, as far as we had an art school that there was really based on fine arts with music, dance, and all the different areas of ceramic art and painting, and that it was our actual charter school that was in the arts, and they used all those top three to be able to do and actually assign those kind of functionalities. And then, of course, every student created their own OneNote portfolio that they could leave with them and became their portfolio of their work. So it could have been even of their performances or anything to that. So that's why I always go back to those three of Teams, OneNote, and Flipgrid. So. Oh, I am going to come back to this slide because I want to talk about too. On this slide, I want you to pay attention to when we talk about communication and sharing, and I know our community comes from as far as being a principal, being a district administrator, being that even from the service agency, however you want to help your schools or help your districts or give them the resources that they can help reach their community, because that's where their community, their parents are going to look to. So when I was a district administrator and I would try to have a district event to like reach out to parents and talk about digital citizenship or talk about safety online or that too, I would get such poor attendance because I didn't have the kind of relationship that I did when I was a building principal. If I actually partnered with a building and when had a demonstration and actually would partner or maybe partner with a few buildings and come together and do a presentation for parents or share information, I would get overwhelming response because the parents and families and guardians, all of that community, especially I was a title principal within an English second language school. So of course they relied on the relationships they had in our building. They relied on us for information. So the more resources we can give out to our schools, out to our members and that too, we're going to create that connection. So in here, you're going to see this Teams family guide. There's a PDF. There's a printable version, and then there's also a PowerPoint. These are links for you to be able to share. They're very simple. They talk about how to get into a meeting, how to help your student find their class, just really simple instructions for families and parents at home. The PowerPoint that's at the bottom is you can download your own copy and localize it. So if you need to add any of your own graphics or yours, that is your copy. But I wanted to point those out to know that you had links to that information too. In those resources too, I've got a guide to team live events. If you have access to live events and through your licensing programs, Flipgrid, of course, is free to everyone. We talked about with teams and being able to use even resources that we have. You're an educator institution in that very first of the presentation, be able to get these tools for free in education. This is what that family and guardian guide looks like. And it really is really try to be simple, talk about why teams and why the guide was created. It was a collaborative effort between our engagement team and actually what we have our modern home team in Microsoft, which is trying to support that seamless connection between schools and home as we go through with remote and hybrid learning. And then finally, we always want to look at those next steps and support and following it to make sure that we have that continuous support. I know even if schools have started or are in this week, you have this beginning of year time to train teachers. I have talked to various trainers across across the country and different parts of the world on different times, of course, because some of the schools across in the world have we have different starting times in that, but it's always the same type of process and those tasks that we complete when we are supporting our education, our trainers, our teachers, everything. We have this really beginning time where we can get some optimal training and sessions in. And I know even if school started, if you have sessions that are started, and if you're hearing this presentation, whether it's recorded or you're with us now and schools have started, that's okay, because this is really the slide that applies to you too, is making sure that you have the continued support and next steps available, because there are going to be more tools that people are going to want to learn. They're going to be that constant kind of changing, and also if as changes might even happen in education, if we switch more from a hybrid to more of a remote learning situation, there might be more resources that are needed. So that continuous constant feedback of being there to add those resources to build on and finding those different kind of training resources. Again, there's that link to the Enable Remote Learning community and joining that. We also have an internal program that's available in our Insider program, but that's more of an application program. But you also have on social media, looking for resources from @Microsoft EDU, @Flipgrid, being able to follow and track those kind of things that are coming up. And creating a Flipgrid for your community to reach in is another way too, to get that kind of response of maybe training resources that you need to have out there. Building support teams, and that's what I was talking about, these internal supports. Finding those people that are out in your schools, maybe in your service center, your train the trainers, your people out in your districts, even district leaders, finding the team that has willing to just share ideas. And I caution you, or I this is just from my own practice and in supporting out there. Of course, if you're doing that train the trainer and that's your model that you follow, it's fabulous and works well. But if you're actually using teachers and educators out in the buildings to do this, it helped to just ask them to kind of be that support team to help, maybe if they're helping their grade level, helping their department, because sometimes if we put on that whole responsibility of training, their whole department or their whole staff, then they kind of get that secondhand and they get nervous about what they're doing just because of everything that's on their plate. But asking other educators or even people of team members or finding those, and a lot of times Microsoft calls them champions. I know I've heard that terms. I've heard other people saying, those people that are just those early adopters that are out there that can just answer questions and say, hey, I forgot how to add a channel in my team. Oh, I know how to do that. Making sure those people are known and having that support system that's internal, it goes a long way in building capacity. Because as you're going through in resources, and that's the one thing as far as even going through education and working with educators globally, the one thing is resources like we talked about, time, and then just the amount of people that we have available. We've got to really set up systems to build capacity so that we're constantly moving forward and being able to spread our system. I'm going to throw out here, you can even, as you get move more into these tools, trying to find out and setting up systems to even include your students in that. We had accreditations. There's a lot of skilling and programs. If you have programs where your students are getting these Microsoft skills, maybe through their career technical education, or if they are in more of a computer science app and you're talking your 11th graders, your seniors, your juniors and seniors, maybe through some programs that they're doing at community college, finding those students, they were our largest resource in our district. We had student tech teams that were a first line of defense for us. They helped teachers with questions. They could check in with other students. I've seen some other and helped some other districts build more of remote these kind of support with students. They can be that first line of defense because they were often your largest resource. So even looking and trying to think a little bit out of the box where you might be able to use some of those resources that you have out of that you have available in there, but helps also build capacity in supporting and setting up that system. And then some information again about our remote learning community that's here. It really is a global professional learning network. Like I said, I think we're up to a little over 8,000 educators, IT administrators that are in this team. There are Microsoft innovative experts in there that can help answer questions. There are product team members from all of the different products, from all the products that I reviewed here today that can help answer questions. There are members of our team that actually support and manage the team that are there to welcome you. There's different channels to find out answers and get that type of support. We have live webinars, we have different resources. We do demonstrations out of there at least 3 times a week on different products. And then also you can participate in like one-on-one channel support. Sometimes we'll even be able to reach out to us individually if you have questions, and we can set up that for you too. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. I'm going to turn on my camera. I'm back. Hello. And we're going to find that. I'm going to find that link to, I believe or not, it was the link to the assessment survey, right? The duplicate?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to find that link. Do you have any other questions?
With the last remaining ones who lasted the full 90 minutes.
I know this was a long session. I know I was excited about that because this was a lot. We kind of changed this one to 90. Let me grab that. Going back through my slides. Ah, there it is. All right, let's see if this works. Yeah, that should work. All right. Added that in there. Well, this was 90 minutes. I think I will make sure, and I think we'll add that onto, I did add 90 minutes onto our into our Minecraft one. I added 90 minutes. So I think we left that off this one. Apologies for people.
I think we maybe did. Yes. Yeah, it was great information, though. Lots of information. We appreciate your expertise, and we want to remind everybody again that next Thursday, September 3rd, we're going to have a Minecraft webinar. So even if it's something you're not interested in, please share it with your coworkers or just share it other districts. We'd love to have more people in on it. It's a great tool for kids to be able to use, teachers and kids. So I want to thank Dr. Gillespie and Renan again for their help and their expertise, and we look forward to seeing you again. Don't forget to check the AESA website. We have all of our webinars upcoming and archived on the events page, and if you scroll down, you'll see webinars and webinar archives. So remember to check those out. So thanks for attending, everyone.
Definitely, and I know I'm seeing some chatter. It is a lot there. Those links are there, so I will definitely send out this presentation so you have access to it, and then with this, and then feel free to share both together. So
Great. Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.